Now, how many of you here have been to a lawnmower race before? Nobody? One? Awesome. Well, my hometown of Carlisle, Iowa has a long history of lawnmower races during our annual 4th of July celebrations. I've got to say, it's probably the most patriotic event that I've ever been to. But what makes this event so patriotic? Well, it's because it is fueled with the resounding reverence for the ideals that our nation was built upon. But what is reverence? Well, reverence means to have a deep regard or respect for someone or something. And today, we lack this reverence for integral parts of our nation. Now, I'm sure growing up, I wasn't the only little boy who was obsessed with the American Revolution, a time when brave men stood against tyranny to rebel and to fight for the ideals they held in their hearts. And for generations, Americans have held with a deep reverence the Founding Fathers, the Constitution, and the values of our great nation. But today, we're slipping. We have failed to make evident to these new generations the inherent reverence we should all have for our nation. First, we've forgotten the dangers incurred by our Founding Fathers when they stood against tyranny. Second, we have forgotten the uniqueness and special nature of our highest law in the land, the Constitution. And last, but most dangerous of all, we're losing sight of the values that make Americans Americans. It is integral that we regain our reverence for the Founding Fathers, the Constitution, and the values of America. But let's begin with the Founding Fathers. For the last decade or so, further than a general apathy towards their actions and dangers incurred during the Revolution, we've been told that they were evil, hypocritical, and even deserve to have their statues torn from their pedestals. We must regain our reverence for these brave patriots who sacrificed so much for us to have the liberty that we do today. Our Founding Fathers were men of action. They were farmers, lawyers, sailors, soldiers, scientists, and generals who were willing to put more than just their money on the line. They were willing to put their lives on the line. As Nathaniel Greene said moments before his execution at the hands of the British, "My only regret is that I have but one life to give for my country." But further than sacrifice, our Founding Fathers were studious men who looked to the mistakes of past governments and saw what not to do. Most people don't know, but the first organizer of government in the United States was not the Constitution, but the Articles of Confederation. And the Articles of Confederation are almost universally criticized for being too weak. But on the other hand, our Founding Fathers had a clear example from the tyranny they seceded from of what not to do. So, they followed the seeds that had been planted in the West since the days of Plato towards the American exceptionalism we know today. But this is not to ignore our forefathers' sins. It is important that we do not paint a celestial veneer of our Founding Fathers. Some of them were bad men. Some of them owned slaves. But that's not the message of America. America is a country that has not always lived up to its values, but we've always tried. And even today, we're walking down that road, as John Winthrop said, towards a shining city on a hill. Thomas Jefferson said the price of freedom is ever vigilance. Well, it's time for us to be vigilant once again. Vigilant to the road that we are in danger of walking down. It is integral that we regain our reverence for these American patriots who sacrificed so much for us to have the liberty that we do today. The next nearly forgotten item is the Constitution. Today in schools, we're taught about the Constitution for 2 weeks, and then we move on. We are severely lacking the reverence that this document deserves. But why does it deserve such reverence? Well, it's because it is entirely unique. It is a living, breathing piece of parchment. It is both a record of past values and a reflection of current ones. It is the shield by which the American citizen can look to the legal aspects of their rights. As the preamble says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America." But today, we're faltering. We have failed our reverence. Today in schools, we're taught the content but not its meaning. We are meant to memorize the amendments but not the liberties that they defend. The Constitution tells the story of America. It is a mirror of American values. And as Americans, it is time that we peer once again into this mirror and regain a shared reverence for the Constitution. The final vital aspect for us to examine is the values of our great nation. No matter what time you were to travel to in American history, whether it's 1776 or 1976, Americans have held a shared interest in the Republic, and that was a reverence for the foundational values of freedom and independence. these values have been enshrined in countless small towns and big cities across the United States. Take my hometown and our 4th of July celebration as a prime example. Now, you'd be amiss to assume that everybody in our town comes for the food or entertainment. We come to celebrate the ideals of our nation. And it is this infectious reverence that occupies so many 4th of July festivals and fairs across our perfect union, and even deepens and inspires people's own reverence towards our nation. Take me as a prime example. Growing up, my favorite time of the year was always 4th of July. Being able to snatch up as much candy as you could during the parade, or getting a funnel cake and snow cone at the fair. But the most memorable part was the patriotism. It was the flag, the fireworks, the shared reverence. The 4th of July always served as a reminder to the uniqueness of the United States, and it even inspired my brother to join the Marine Corps and me to strive to be in the United States Army. I believe that Calvin Coolidge said it best, though, when he explained to the world the reason why so many small towns and cities celebrate independence. He said, the purpose is to reestablish and reaffirm those old principles and theories for which time and the unerring logic of events have demonstrated to be sound. That every American can turn for solace and consolation to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America with the assurance and confidence that those two great charters of American freedom and justice remain firm and unshaken. But today, we are losing sight of these values. For the last half a century, we have heard the calls for the sacrifice of freedom for security. As one commentator put it, he would rather live on his knees than die on his feet. But these calls have failed to garner broad enough support in the United States. And it is the duty of every freedom-loving American to stand against these calls and remind our fellow citizens towards the reverence we should all have for the inalienable values of freedom and independence of the United States. To remind our fellow countrymen of the values that generations of Americans have fought and died in defense of. As the Army song says, from Valley Forge, Custer's Ranks, San Juan Hill, Patton's Tanks. As the Marine Corps hymn says, from the snow of far-off northern lands to sunny tropic scenes. As the Navy's Anchor Away says, blue of mighty deep, gold of God's gray sun. As the Air Force song says, off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. And as the Coast Guard Semper Paratus says, from Aztec shore to Arctic zone to Europe and Far East, no matter where young, brave men and women of America have gone to serve, they've always done it out of an innate reverence for the ideals of our nation. In conclusion, it is crucial that we, as men and women of America, as the vanguard of freedom and independence, remind our fellow countrymen of the reverence we should all have for the Founding Fathers, the Constitution, and the values of our great nation. The reverence we should have for the Founding Fathers because of the dangers they took and the risks they incurred to ensure the creation of a nation unlike any other. The reverence we should all have for the Constitution because of its uniqueness and nature unlike any other document in human history. And of course, the reverence we should all have for the United States values, values that have united Americans for centuries. And as we race into the future, even if it may be at the speed of a lawnmower, it is integral that we regain our reverence for the Founding Fathers, the Constitution, and the values of our great union as a fuel source for a brighter future.